Now it's time for Four Questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. And welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I am your host, Mike Chapman, and with me today is Dr. Richard Windmann, and I will share with you his intro in a moment. And we also have a live audience here with us. If you would like to join us on future episodes, you can do so. Find out more on my website, which is polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And a reminder for all those audience members here who have joined with us live, we will honor anonymity. We will only say your name if you manually type it in along with your question or comment. So with that, let me talk to you about Richard. Dr. Richard Windmann, PhD, was a victim of protracted childhood sexual abuse. And I had to look that up. Protracted means a long time occurring sexual abuse from the ages of 7 until 17. Wow. And he estimates he's been raped by hundreds, if not over 1,000 men during that 10-year period. After doing advocacy work with SNAP, the Survivor Network for those abused by priests. And then 5 years ago, he started his own advocacy nonprofit 501c3 called Survivors of Childhood Sexual Abuse, SCSA. And if you listen to previous episodes, that's the group that Luke Wiersma is affiliated with as well. And he's been on our podcast several times. And SCSA has over 37,000 members worldwide. That's impressive. And SCSA offers peer-led support meetings, one-on-one consultations, mental health and legal referrals, in addition to championing statute of limitations eliminations, yay, with legislative look-back windows. The first law passed was in Louisiana, where the Catholic Church challenged the law up to the Louisiana State Supreme Court and was upheld. Richard graduated from Loyola University College of Law School in 2022 as a distinguished fellow. We are going to begin, like we do most episodes, with 4 questions. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. So, Richard, what is your favorite food memory?
I was born in New Orleans, lived there for about 35 years. It's just the most incredible food in the world, all of
Oh,
it.
yes.
But,
I,
I don't have a specific food memory, but I can tell you that my go-to is a medium rare ribeye.
so you love steak.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yes, which is funny. Yeah, my wife absolutely loves steak, and I am not a steak person. I don't know what it is. I just never cared for steak. I like hamburger, love ribs and chicken and all that, but I'm just not big on steak,
But
and
you're,
she loves steak.
but you're not a vegan or a nothing like that,
Oh
right?
no, not at all. No, give me a plate of ribs or Carolina barbecue. So usually when I'm off on one of these retreats and so forth, she'll buy herself a nice steak and cook it up and not have to worry about me and having to fix something for me too. So she waits until we do that.
She
Um,
sounds like a special lady.
oh, very much. Yes, we just celebrated 34 years together, in fact. So, and by the way, I love Cajun food, tons of Cajun food. And yeah, I've had alligator and all that.
It tastes like chicken.
It does, except the tail, because I think it's more muscular. It's more beefy because the tail has so much muscle. But yeah, it depends on which body part and how it's cooked and so forth. But yeah, it's really good.
And in Louisiana, we don't fear the teeth, we fear the tail. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very, very powerful for sure. So, what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
My favorite Christmas holiday is right before my abuse started. I
Hmm.
was 6 years old. Parents were separated, but at that particular Christmas, my dad got out of the hospital. He had a quadruple bypass, and my mom was
Wow.
taken. So I was fortunate enough to have both my parents and my brother there. And man, they really overdid the gifts. It was really nice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Anything else? Just that they did a lot of gifts that year, or what made
It
it
wasn't about the
special?
gifts. It was about seeing my parents together again.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes. That makes sense for
Yeah.
sure. So, what is your favorite church or house of worship memory?
None. I,
Nope.
I started out in the Catholic faith. I became a super Catholic. I made communion. I was confirmed. I became a liturgist, a Eucharistic minister, and a
Okay.
fourth degree Knight of Columbus.
Oh,
I,
wow.
it got to the point so bad that I left the church. However, I do practice my Catholicism inside SESA. There's a lot of Catholic survivors who struggle with their faith.
Right.
And we found a priest, his name's Rosard Biernat. He was molested by a priest in a seminary and he blew the whistle. They took away all his priestly duties with the exception of doing private masses. And
Hmm.
so we have a survivors mass every Sunday for those who choose to attend, right? It's not something that we really advertise, but when you're
Right.
doing a one-on-one with somebody or you get somebody in a group that's really struggling with their faith, we approach them and we do it every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Time, and it's extremely therapeutic. But because you can't trust the priest, but this priest you can trust, you
Right.
know. And,
Right.
and so everybody feels safe and comfortable. And I love going to it. Been doing that for
Wow.
the past 4 years.
Yes. Wonderful. So, you do have a favorite memory. It's with that group. So, there you go.
Yeah, but it's recent.
Well, but that's okay. You can have recent
Okay.
memories too.
Okay.
Yes. So, what is your favorite scripture or any inspirational quote that has helped you on your spiritual journey? And what about it speaks to you?
I think it's self-explanatory. It comes from the book of Luke. Woe is he who scandalizes the little ones, better than a millstone be hung around his neck and cast into the sea.
Right. Yep. Yep. Millstone. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. And that perfect segue into telling us your story. And I'm sure your story, like a lot of ours, it oftentimes not linear, but kind of bounces back and forth as things are disclosed or discovered along your journeys. So, would love to know more about that and how it was all for over 10 years, 7 until 17, what all
Yeah.
happened with that.
Mhm.
And then talk about your healing journey, what you've been doing to help find healing, what things have worked. And I love to ask what things you tried that absolutely didn't work. Because, yeah, it's not always easy to find healing. And some things work really well, and some things do not work at all. And different people have different success on that. And then also, I would love to hear more about what you're doing today and how you're working with SNAP and now SCSA, which is now huge. I'm so impressed. So I'd love to learn more about that as well.
Okay, so I started at 7. Like I told you, at 6, my dad came home for healing from a surgery. After he's healed up, he split again. He took off. So mom's single. We don't have a whole lot of money. He's very stingy with the money. They never divorced, but they were separated. But
Mhm.
my dad led my mother to believe that they were divorced, and he was very, very stingy with the money. The Boy Scouts Troop 137, you can just Google it and you'll see. They started canvassing poor neighborhoods. We were in a very poor neighborhood in New Orleans.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about this case in New Orleans. Okay, yeah, I've heard a lot about this case.
Yeah.
Please
And
continue.
yeah, so they were canvassing neighborhoods. My mom wasn't at home. And my thing was, I wanted to be Evil Knievel. And I built this gigantic ramp, a gigantic ramp. I've never went on it before. I tried to brace the bottom so it wouldn't bend.
Uh-huh.
And these two guys pulled up and said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, and all my friends are there too. I'm like, "I'm about to jump that ramp." And they're like, "Can we watch?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I went to the end of the block and I just pedaled as fast as I could. I hit the ramp. The brace comes off. It catapults me in the air. And I come down with my teeth on the gooseneck.
Wow.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the gooseneck is the part that connects the handlebars.
Actually, I needed that explanation too. It's
So
wow.
I was bleeding like a pig. All my friends, except for one, took off. They're like,
Wow.
"Where's your mom?" And my friend Joey said, "Well, she's at work right now." And they're like, "Get in the car. We're going to bring you to the hospital." And they
Mm,
did. They brought me to the hospital, but they warned me that the only way they're going to treat you is if they think I'm your father. So you're going to have to call me dad. Went to the hospital and they were like, there's nothing we can do for him. He needs a dentist. And so
mm,
I had a family dentist. I had a hard time explaining how to get there, but we just started cruising around till I started recognizing things. And we finally found his office and we went in there and he goes, "Boy, you really screwed up this time." And he looked me over, goes, "Hey, you chipped one tooth. It's just going to take time to heal. After it heals, then we'll take care of the chipped tooth. And by the way, who are you guys?" We just, the daddy thing stopped. No, we were just driving down the road and, we saw
right.
him do this. And his friend told us that his mom wasn't at home. And he said, "Boy, Betty's going to be pissed when she hears about this." And he gave me a big, huge envelope of Percocet and I went home. And my mom's home. She's panicking. There's a ramp and she didn't know that I jumped bicycles. I kept that a secret
Right.
from her.
Of
And
course.
there's blood all over the sidewalk. She was just panicking. She called the police, the local hospitals, and they brought me home and they introduced themselves to my mom. And there's a sort of an element of trust there because they took care of me and brought me to
Right.
the dentist, right?
Right.
And they said, "Hey, we're looking for Boy Scouts. We have a troop in New Orleans East, and we're having a hard time getting kids to join. Would you mind if you was to join the troop?" She was like, "We're really poor. We can't afford uniforms." And they're like, "No, no, 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 no. You won't have to pay a dime, not a dime."
Mm,
And they asked me what my hobby was, and it was snake hunting. And they're like, "Me too."
of course.
Oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
sold. I'm in the Boy Scouts now. And I felt special because I actually was in the Cub Scouts. So I thought that somehow that I was advanced and I was gonna skip the Weeblos and go straight into the Boy Scouts.
Oh,
And Troop 137, just to make it short, was a front for an international pedophile ring.
yes.
And that's where the bulk of the actual abuse happened. Scout masters would
Hmm.
fly in from out of town just visiting, and they'd send me to the hotel rooms and it would happen again. I stopped
Mm,
counting at 10 because what's the purpose in counting at that point? But the first time was with the scout master. It was just oral sex.
hmm.
I didn't know what to think about it. Didn't feel good, didn't feel bad. I guess that's just something that happens. But the second one there was at the church that was sponsoring the troop, and man, I got sodomized for the first time. I was screeching in pain. Oh, by the way, they wanted my brother to be in the Boy Scouts too, and he was in the room as well. I was always a skinny kid, but my brother was big. And so he fought it off. And the other scoutmaster wound up controlling him and putting him face down on the floor and then taking him by the hair and making my own brother look at me while I was being sodomized. And it
Mm,
was, I can't describe the pain. I can't describe the pain.
right. Seeing him hurt, but also knowing that he was watching and forced to watch what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, let's try a different lube. How about some KY instead of Vaseline? Okay. Stop crying. Stop crying. And then he gets a third scoutmaster to do oral sex on me to see if that would ease the pain. And this guy his name was Tom Woodall, and he was brutal. He was just, there's
Mm,
nothing nice. There was no such a thing as, "Oh, the head's coming in now. We're gonna take it slow, just relax." He just jammed me, man.
right.
And then the people from out of town come in and they always filmed me and they always took photographs. The Boy
Mm,
Scouts has a two deep policy now where there must be two scoutmasters. And I actually work with the new guy that's in charge of youth protection at the Boy Scouts. And I told him, I said, how is that going to work? I had four scoutmasters, a four deep policy, one from the behind, one from the front, one filming, and one taking pictures. So yeah, so how's that going to work? Two deep policy. And that happened for a while, for years. Well, I estimate about 3 years. Every single weekend, vacations, sometimes during the week if it was a holiday. That's
mm,
where I come up with that number. And sometimes 5 times a day,
right.
sometimes. And yeah, that the kiddie porn. A couple of months ago, I got a call. Pedophiles called me up and harassed me, by the way. And one called and said,
Oh, even now as an adult.
yes,
Oh,
yeah, just
wow.
they say the last one said, "Hey Richard, I know that you're aging, but I want to let you know that I still find you attractive. And if you're feeling bad about yourself, we want you to know that you're considered the Linda Lovelace of the child pornography industry." And I got to take the calls because I got survivors with shotguns in their mouth, and I have to answer the phones.
Right,
It's one of those things. So they get busted. I testified at the trials.
right.
I thought it was over. The district attorney, Harry Connick, thought it would be a good idea if policemen were to be like a big brother or whatever to the victims of the Boy Scouts. And I was initially assigned to one cop. And then, like 2 weeks later, I'm assigned a different one. And his name was Stanley Burkhart. And he was the commander of the pedophile unit and the child sex abuse division. And he did the same thing to me. He brought me up to police headquarters on the third floor. There's a special evidence room just for kiddie porn. And he was the only one that had a key, and he brought me in and he started showing me the kiddie porn. I'm like, oh my God. And just like the first time it happens, you freeze. I
Hmm.
froze for the second time as he took down my pants and started doing oral sex on me. Later on, I guess I aged out or whatever. He would use me as bait to make cases against pedophiles. So he would put me on a mailbox in a French Quarter. Pedophiles would pick me up, have sex with me. He'd make a case and arrest them. So he used me for bait.
But
And
wouldn't stop it before the sexual act. You would go all the way and then they would rest after.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And he was so gracious that he let me keep the $20 they would throw at me, whatever.
Wow.
And then it was a priest at Jesuit High School. I started out with the janitor, and he was sodomizing me in the basement of Jesuit High School. And the priest walks in, and I go, "It's over. The priest is here. It's over finally." And geez, the priest puts his hand on the small of my back, and he says, "Relax." And then the priest starts masturbating.
Mm,
Uh, And they were all interconnected, doing the research over the years. And that's just me, but many people. I was playing basketball in the back of Jesuit High School, and there's the cop, Stanley Burkhart, using his undercover name, which was Jack DiCaprio. And he's talking to the janitor. So they knew each other. Further research, one of my friends died at the hands of Stanley Burkhart. And I found out just recently that my friend was also in Troop 137.
mm,
So all three cases are connected. People ask me that all the time. Really, Richard, like the Boy Scouts, then a cop, then a priest. And that's true. A
right.
federal judge in North Carolina found me credible and Stanley Burkhart not credible. The Jesuits settled with me for a $500,000.
Mm,
Uh, and so that's credible. Stanley Burkhart's credible. And the Boy Scouts is also credible too, because I testified and sent all of them to jail for the rest of their lives.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And they all died,
Yeah.
with the exception of one.
Mm. I know two different documentaries came out recently in the last few years. Scout's Honor, which was on Netflix, and
I
Leave
was
No
in that.
Trace. You were okay, and Leave
Yeah.
No Trace, which was on Hulu.
No,
Were you a part of that? I know that's
no,
where I had
not,
heard this story, but I don't know if Leave No Trace specifically talked about the New Orleans case or not?
I don't know. I didn't watch it. For the Netflix one, they interviewed me and also provided documentation and research to the project.
Right. Wow. So this continued until you were 17 with all these
Yes.
different groups?
Yeah, yeah. Eventually, I got old enough. I didn't believe the priest and the janitor's threats anymore. So I just said, "Fuck you guys, bye." So the abuse at Jesuit ended because I just didn't believe their threats. They would kill me, kill my
Right.
parents, whatever. Bye bye, assholes. But Stanley Burkhart had a badge and a gun, and I tried when he wanted me to go out and sit on that mailbox. Sometimes I would tell him no. And he'd pick me up by the throat and put his pistol in my mouth. And he said, "You'll be done when I say you are." So I was kind of trapped. I started running away and he would find me. I was working in Fort Erie, Canada on a
Hmm.
racetrack and he found me. I,
Wow.
I couldn't escape. And it's so I was still being abused. And when he got arrested for the first time, the postal inspector did an investigation, and he was charged with kiddie porn. And of course, the first thing he says, "Well, I'm the commander of the pedophile unit. I use this material to, catch pedophiles." And I didn't believe it for a second. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Right. So when did you first disclose to your mother or to anyone that wasn't a perp or like the police officer, potential perp who became a perp? Did you first tell anyone? I mean, your brother obviously knew. When were
Yeah,
you able to?
and you want to know
Mhm.
what happened to him?
Yes.
Huge behavioral problems. They put him in a special school and called him a moron. He acted out. He was very, very violent.
Right.
They sent him to Hope Haven in New Orleans. Look, Google that. He was
Mm.
molested at Hope Haven.
So he
He
was
didn't.
molested there as well. Yeah, a lot of residential school programs, what have you. Yeah, there's constant reports of abuse because vulnerable populations, no matter what the reason is for the dormitory environment, whether it's a private school or a military school or a special needs school or whatever, it's a vulnerable population. And that's where pedophiles will seek to find jobs and so forth. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Jobs of authority where they have access to children. And Hope Haven was run by the Catholic Church.
right.
He ran away 3 times and it's across the river. So you have to catch a ferry if you're a kid, if you want to get across.
Hmm.
Every single time the priest and the Gretna Police Department were there waiting for him. And the Gretna Police simply didn't believe my brother and they gave him back to the priest. So yeah,
Wow.
it's been a rough run for a lot of people. It seems like New
Right.
Orleans is like ground zero for this pedophile activity. I
Right.
know it happens everywhere. Even in
Right.
Brazil, we've got members from Japan and Brazil, Sweden. But it just seemed like a hotbed.
Right.
All of my kids, all of my friends, my childhood friends were raped by the janitor at Jesuit High School.
Wow. So, going back to the question, when did you first disclose to anyone
Oh, okay.
outside of this?
Well, the Boy Scouts happened, and back then it's the late 70s probably. First off, my mom, it destroyed her, but she was also guilty too. I found out that she suspected that I was being molested, and she went to the Boy Scouts to confront them. And in exchange for having access to me, they would pay her rent and her electrical bill. My dad shows up on the scene again, and they're fighting right in front of me about whose fault it is. Because this is on TV every night for like a month. And so they knew that I was molested by the Boy Scouts. They didn't know about Stanley Burkhart and they didn't know about the police. But the sketch artist in the courtroom draw me like a Mona Lisa. Everybody knew that I was the Ricky. So
Wow.
it's like everybody now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did they say? when they realized, wait, this is our son, did they talk to you about it? Or,
My parents?
yes,
No, they just argued. And my dad looked at me very briefly, square in the eye, and he said, I'm going to kill those motherfuckers. He
right.
goes down to the corner bar, gets wasted, and he tells all the patrons in the bar that he's raising a faggot. And they
Mm.
chased him out of town, and I never saw him again.
Wow. So your father,
Yeah,
they chased him out of town. Wow. Wow. So you
yeah.
never heard from him after that?
No.
Wow.
It's kind of funny. People think that people that hang out in bars don't have any morals, but apparently this patronage did.
Right.
They just ran him out.
Wow. Wow.
In terms of adult, tell me if you agree. You've been doing this work for a little while.
Hmm.
There's two ways that a victim of childhood sex abuse handles this. The younger
Hmm.
they are, it tends to be repressed memories.
Right. That
But
was my
when,
story. Yes.
yeah, but when you've been raped for a decade,
Right.
there's no way you forget that. So you file away, it becomes a recessed memory.
Right.
And I took the latter path, and well, first off, I had to prove to myself that I wasn't gay. And I went down to the convention center. I found out where all the conventions were going to be. And I go to the hotel bars. I just turned 18, and you could drink at 18 back then. And that slipped the bartender $20 to pretend like he knows me. And I just worked my magic on ladies. And
Hmm.
that went on for probably 6 or 7 months. And then it occurred to me in my juvenile mind, it's consensual sex. We're all adults, open to our thing. But in my child brain, I thought that I was using the same grooming techniques on the women that were used against me.
Yes.
And
Interesting insight. Yeah.
I promptly committed suicide. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror.
Right.
I say committed suicide because it wasn't a call for help. I intended to die. They found me. I was in a coma for 5 days before I woke up. And then after that, something magical just happened in my life. I'm going to college. And victims and survivors, there's a million things going on in our heads. We
Mm.
live in our amygdala. We're 5 miles ahead of the plane going 500 miles an hour. I'm always working on 20 different problems that I think are going to happen. So I'm thinking of scenarios and how I'm going to handle it, stuff like that. Very, very, very busy mind. And I took all of that mental energy and I poured it into my academics, and I did incredibly well. And it was the same thing with my career. My career is incredible. I worked for the biggest names, Cisco Systems, IBM, Palo Alto, International Network Service. It just on and on and on and on. And I had a family. I have a beautiful family. I do, a boy and a girl. Things just started magically happening to me. I believe they're blessings from God, to be honest
Right.
with you.
Right.
And I thought everything was okay until I was 47 and the Sandusky case.
Yeah.
The the journalist did too good of a job describing the details. I see pedophiles on the news every night, and it doesn't trigger me. But boys, Sandusky, and to know about his man cave at the house with his wife cooking just 10 feet away, where all he's raping kids and taking kids into the shower. That's stuff that I didn't need to know. And I blew a huge gasket, and I hit the bottle really bad.
Mm. So you were
Oh,
obviously those memories were triggered by that. I just looked it up. So this is back in 2011 when the case broke
yeah.
and started becoming public. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been sober my entire life. My first drop of
Mm.
alcohol was when I saw the Sandusky case.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was. And alcohol for me wasn't a problem. It was my solution for a
Mm.
while.
Right.
I approached the Jesuits about what happened to me. I went for spiritual guidance and psychological help. And they're like, nah, we're just going to give you a whole bunch of money. Shut up, go away. It was literally like that. Just you know. Well, as long as you're giving away money, I'll take all of it, you know. And after that, I felt guilty because I just accepted a $500,000 from my church.
Hmm.
And so the mind fuck just kept coming, kept coming. I wanted to tell my story to the world. And but it been my experience, especially listening to other victims and survivors, that I wouldn't be believed. You know, what your pedophile tells you when he's grooming you is nobody's going to believe. I'm a priest. You're a
Right.
piece of shit kid from mid-city. Do you
Hmm.
actually think they're going to believe you? Go ahead. No. And your frontal cortices aren't even developed yet, and you're programmed to believe that well until adulthood. And so I leaked my story to the press. I gave them the Jesuit settlement document. I also, because I knew I was dealing with evil, evil people, I recorded all of the negotiations, all of that
Hmm.
stuff,
Right.
and I blasted it to the press. Everybody wanted to talk to, but there was one reporter named Ramon Vargas, and I asked him, I asked all the reporters, why are you interested in this story? And he said, when I heard the recordings, I heard my own eighth grade teacher, a Jesuit, interrogating you, and my toes curled. I'm like, that's my reporter. That's who I'm going to talk to.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so the world finally knew my story.
Wow.
But I only
Wow.
told the story in reverse. I told them about the Jesuits first,
Hmm.
and we established a trust relationship. Oh, did you know I was in Troop 137 too? Really? And then Burkhart. I told it in reverse order intentionally because, you know, there's no way anybody's going to believe that all of that abuse happened over a decade.
Right.
Yeah, you're fucking nuts. You're lying. Yeah, yeah, that's how it goes. So I had to have proof in the form of documentation and audio recordings to where I would feel safe enough that I would be believed.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Right.
Now, in between then and here, you know, going through, say, alcohol rehab, I've shared my stories, and but that's the first time I went public on my own.
Now, you mention with the abuse and the trafficking, it was documented with film and photography.
Yeah,
Have that officer kind of did his own thing as well. Have you been able to recover any of that? Or because I know National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they keep a database. Have you contacted them about
I
that?
haven't, I haven't. I did tell the police. Well, I didn't tell the police actually. The police came to me and told me it was there. So
Hmm.
the pedophiles didn't need to call me. I already knew it was there.
Right. So have they been able to take it down or claim it?
If you can
Because,
think about it, it's on the dark web.
right.
So it's on Tor. And I'll tell you this because I'm a computer scientist. The
Hmm.
only way that you could possibly track it down is a technique called endpoint correlation, where you have a sniffer, you know, right before it goes into the onion and a sniffer when it comes out the onion. And only then it's not 100% accurate.
Right.
Then you can trace that.
Right.
And they're sitting on regular servers all over the world. And now everything's in the cloud. So it doesn't make a difference if you delete it one place, it's just going to replicate back, you know?
Right. But if it's in the system and they can tag it to you, then when they go through and fight these places, they can say, no, we know who this is, and no, 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 no. And because they have a human adult tied with that image and it gives them more power, something like that. And they can take it down when they can find it.
Yeah.
So that is something to consider. I know I've done that. They have, of course, I haven't followed up in a couple of years, but yeah, they have pictures of me at that age when I was trafficked, and in case I did end up in some pornography, my memories are sketchy because there was a lot of repressed memories. But yeah, um,
What age did you find out that
uh,
you're on the internet?
they have not found it on the internet, but I gave them my information
Okay.
saying yes. So I'm on the database for them to search it. So if they find something, they can match it to me. Last I heard, they had not. After about a year, after I first disclosed to them, about a year later, they said, no, we have not found anything currently, but we will add you to the database.
Well, I'm telling you because I know my job that everything's in the cloud now.
Right,
It's replicated to 20, if not 30 other sites for, security and redundancy for not losing the data. And every one of those sites has a backup SAN volume and they have a business continuity
right,
volume. So if you
right,
delete it, it's just going to come back.
right. Understand. So you've come out of this, and what things did you do to start your healing journey? Obviously, all this Sandusky stuff came out in 2011, and it sounds like that kind of triggered you into really opening this up and finding healing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and maybe you'll agree with me or not, but once you publicly tell your story, it feels like the world is lifted off your shoulder.
Oh,
But then you go through an anger phase, and
yes.
that was me. I was very, very angry.
Well, because it forces you to deal with your stuff because now you have it out there. And then it forces you to confront everything. So, yeah, you go through the anger and you go through the sadness and the grief and the loss. And whereas before you were just shoving it down, so you didn't have to deal with it. Now
Right.
it's out and it's open. So, yeah, everything comes out with it.
A week,
Absolutely.
a week after my story came out, me and my wife and my kids, we were in New Orleans, and we stopped in my favorite restaurant. And just everybody in the place was staring at me, whispering. I mean, if I look back at them, they wouldn't break eye contact at all. And the manager of the restaurant said, "I'm sorry, sir, you and your family are gonna have to leave."
Wow.
Yeah, but then I'm like, hell, let's go to Mississippi, go to a casino, get dinner there, and we go there. And the security guard goes, I know you were on TV today. I'm like, yeah. Because I did many interviews. Thanks, man. And I'm walking away with my family, and somebody grabs me from behind, and I turn around, and it's a little old grandmother telling me how proud she is of me.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was super cool. And I recognized the value of the media right away.
Right.
I learned that if a reporter ever calls you for an interview and you say no, they're not going to call you back. And so I took advantage of that. Over the past 5 years, we've exposed a lot of people in terms of the cover up that's been happening. We found priests that are not on the credibly accused list. We've got three federal judges to recuse themselves from Catholic cases because in their disclosure, they said that they didn't have any connections. One of them, his wife, gave the church $150,000, and we found that out.
Wow.
And so he had to recuse himself too. So there's a little anger, a little revenge in it in the beginning.
Right.
But over time, I mean, when you're angry, you'll fight anybody over anything. And today,
Right.
I pick my battles a little bit more carefully. And like you said, the growth of SCSA is just incredible. Snap's been in business since I think the early 80s, and they had 30,000 members. And just in 5 years, we have 37,000 members, which is
Wow.
very humbling.
Right.
Our groups are alive, they're growing, they're thriving. We lost a couple of people along the way. Um, it's and that's really at the heart of my healing,
Right.
You know, the psychological, psychiatric sciences are way behind on this. Yeah, it's hard to find a good counselor that is trauma informed and trained. And when
Absolutely.
you
Though it is
don't,
getting better. There's a lot more, just in the last 10 years, a lot more brain science and
Mhm,
so forth, and different techniques on healing for trauma going
mhm,
down deep. So there's a lot out there. So telling your story seems like that was a significant
mhm,
milestone in your healing. What
mhm.
else have you tried since then? And obviously the service work that you do with SCSA and what you did previously with SNAP, that definitely is helping working with others
Yeah.
who are dealing with this. But what other things have you done? So it sounds like you've tried different therapy options in the past, and sounds like a lot of them may not have been very successful.
Well, of course, the self-medicating part is never good.
Right. Yes.
I think it's just maturity over time with the other stuff that you mentioned. I get angry all the time, but I don't express it anymore.
Mm, right. Which
Speak,
isn't necessarily healthy, but yes, there's
but
healthy
it's funny.
ways to express anger. But yes, I get it. Absolutely.
Anger is a necessary emotion.
Right.
9/11 goes down, you got to go kick somebody's butt. That's just the
Yeah.
way it works. But yeah, I don't express anger anymore. I feel like I've grown 80 years in the past 11 years that I've been doing this work
Yeah.
in terms of maturing.
Right. Right. They
And
say the abuse kind of stunts your maturity level. And then when you start your healing process, then you start maturing. And I've been feeling that as well. But I think it kind of fast forwards. It's not linear time, but it fast forwards the more healing you get and so forth.
yeah,
Then, yeah, you absolutely mature. And yes, I'm feeling that for
and
myself as well.
I get goofier too. Somebody told me the other
Yes.
day, they said, you're just like running around in a pasture knocking over beehives and everybody gets stung. I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or not, but I am living my childhood, not my second childhood, because I
Right.
never had a childhood. So
Right.
I'm living my childhood right now. I do what I want on my own terms.
Well, you have the freedom of experiencing joy
Mhm.
that you didn't have before. And having that freedom, and especially that little Ricky inside of you
Yeah,
who wants to be free and have that childhood he never had. So
yeah.
yeah, it's all that coming out.
And
I
I think,
love the quote, we are all the ages we have ever been. We are still all those ages.
yeah.
So yeah, that little Ricky is absolutely expressing himself. And yeah, good on you.
You know what goes a long way, at least for me, is respect.
Hmm.
I've spoken to psychology departments at Stanford, University of Texas, Boston, and they're like really engaged in it, and they want to hear what you have to say.
Right,
Um, and I tell them this all the time. Listen, here's the DSM-5 describes all these disorders, but there's no cure for it. I'll have it for
right.
the rest of my lives unless you guys figure it out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And
Absolutely.
for them to take that to heart means the world to me.
Right. Right. And they are working on it. There's different techniques out there that are used, like EMDR, which is
EMDR.
like the big one, though I've never experienced that. My own therapist did other things. But yeah, there's definitely different ways. What about creative endeavors like music or art therapy or anything like that?
I got two gold records and a platinum record and one Grammy. And
Really?
yeah, and Scout's Honor was recently Emmy nominated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
My life, I've been a recording session bassist,
Wow. So bass guitar or the bass, the upright bass,
either
or
one.
both? Really? Wow. Yes, my son's a musician as well, and I know he loves expressing all of his stuff through music, which I think is healing for him.
It's very therapeutic.
Yes, and I said this on many episodes, creative endeavors, art, music, poetry, all of that, they're all right brain activities.
Mhm.
And guess where trauma gets stored in the brain? In the right brain. So
Yeah.
those creative endeavors can access those traumas in a deeper way than simply talking about it or talk therapy, things like that, that won't necessarily touch it. But you do something creative, your brain can heal because it can express those emotions, those feelings, those memories, and help resolve those working through those creative endeavors.
I've done ego state therapy as both a primer and an adjunct to EMDR. Didn't work. What's really effective for me, I think the most effective is, I think, God bless the Boy Scouts. They paid for my counseling for the rest of my life. I have, and that's part of it frustrates me about the psychological community. First off, victims and survivors, a lot of them are indigent. And the
Right.
ones that have insurance, they don't take insurance. They can take insurance. There are billing codes for it, but rather than do the billing at the doctor's office, they put it on you, which does what? It creates stress and all that stuff.
Right.
So I'm very, very grateful that the Boy Scout writes my therapist a really big check. But the thing that's most helpful for me is with my therapist, just
Right.
talking, and the support groups every Saturday that we do, and it's not just the right side of the brain, but did you know that the amygdala also stores memory?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a rough ride. I feel like I'm well along on my journey of healing, but I have to be honest with myself is that there'll probably not during my lifetime be a cure for it.
But definitely it's a healing journey for sure. And that's what I've told anyone who's on this road as a survivor, and even more so for those of us who have been trafficked, that yeah, those wounds go very deep. There was lots of trauma and it's a journey. Absolutely. You just continue on
Yeah,
and continue to find different things that work and grow and help others along the way.
yeah,
And we all learn and we all help. This podcast for me is very healing, and knowing I'm helping other men and having this safe space where men can come on like yourself and share your stories and inspire others. And that's the theme of my podcast, the power of story. That not only does it have the power to allow you to heal as you share, but
mhm.
inspires other men to find healing and to begin their own healing journeys and eventually get to a point where they can tell their stories as well.
Yeah, and it's really great that this renaissance has happened since the invention of the internet because it's not
Oh,
going away now. Our stories are not
yes,
going away.
absolutely. Absolutely. They cannot deny that we exist.
Yep.
Uh,
Awareness is our number one tool against this, in my opinion.
yes, absolutely. So, how did you start? I know you were involved with SNAP, which works with all kinds of clergy abuse, not just Catholic. And so you worked with them for a while. And then what spurred you on to start SCSA?
So I revitalized Snap in New Orleans, and then I became Snap Louisiana, and then I became Snap for the entire Central Time Zone. And the more higher I got in the organization, the more I was micromanaged.
Hmm.
Another thing, caring about other survivors besides victims of priests. Back when I was with Snap, they didn't do that. The more you do the work, you discover that for the biggest demographic of children that are abused is at the home setting. It's the
Right,
mother, the father, the grandparents, the drunk uncle, the babysitter, the friend of a family. And that's a really hard nut to crack for those people
right.
to come forward. And
Absolutely, which is all of my story because of father abused me and then he was also my trafficker.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
But it's other institutions like the Boy Scouts
right.
and it's not just the Catholics, it's cross-denominational. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, and I
and
got it sexually assaulted by a Methodist minister when I was in college. So yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I get it. It's all faiths, all religions, all denominations. It's everywhere because it's another place where pedophiles can find vulnerable people and take advantage and groom.
yeah,
So, and the grooming, like those guys did, they groomed the parents, they groomed your mother
yeah,
into believing they were safe and helping her boys. And they groomed the Boy Scouts into believing
yeah.
that they were safe and had all this wonderful helpfulness. And
People
that, yes,
people ask me all the time, aren't you angry at the Catholic laity? And
mm,
I'm like, no, because they were perfectly groomed before they groomed the kids.
right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And that's anything with institutionalized abuse, where it's with athletics or Boy Scouts or church or communities of faith, but then also like the celebrities
Wow.
that do these things, that they are an institution, and the institution will allow those people who make money or profit from the institution will protect the institution at all costs and will fight tooth and nail and victim blame and victim shame. And you see that story after story. The Hillsong things in Australia, same thing. All these things again and again. It's the same. It's like carbon copy. They just someone made this blueprint. This is how you do it, and they just applied it in all these different venues and all these different situations to get this successfully working for them for decades upon decades.
And what's really disturbing is in the case of the Catholic Church, they have no problem talking shit about victims and survivors on TV.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, that's and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be my moral authority. You
Right.
know, in my Catholic formation, when I was a kid, if I told a lie, I was going straight to hell. But
Mm.
yet they sit there in their clown outfits behind a pulpit and they lie every single day to our face.
Right. And they will victim blame and so forth. I did reopen my case with the Methodist, and I just happened to disclose the fact that I had uncovered that my father had abused me. Not that I was trafficked, but that my father had abused me. Oh, well, that changed the whole thing. And now basically I was damaged goods. So anything that their person did to me, well, any therapy they would pay for would also help me for all the wounds I got from my father. So therefore, their responsibility would be less because I was damaged goods.
Yeah,
And it's like, wait, this is like the church who's supposed to be there supporting. And yeah, they are protecting the institution. That is their goal, is to protect the institution. And so they
absolutely.
will minimize and lessen and attack the victims who the church should be helping and supporting. But no, they have to protect the institution at all costs, even though that's not who Jesus was. It's like when Jesus overturned the money changers in the church. It's that kind of corruption that he would call out. And it's everywhere. It's in all denominations, all faiths. It's everywhere. And it's sad.
I believe he's here, but assuming he's not, I don't think Jesus would recognize his bride.
Oh yes, understand. Yeah,
And it's yeah, it was like with the Jesuits. I went there for help.
right.
Psychological. No, 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 no. We're just gonna give you a boatload of money and shut your mouth and go away. Seriously? There's other kids I know are being molested by Pete Modica, and I can find them for you. And they're like, no, 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 don't do that. I'm like, why not? And they said, well, Richard, some people just don't want to be found.
Yeah. Or yeah, no, some people don't want to be found out.
Well, at Jesuit High School,
Yes.
when my story broke, 70 cases were filed that week.
Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet.
yeah. So they did want to be found.
Right, right. And you think you're the only one.
That's the other thing. Yeah, you think you're
Right, right. Absolutely. So you've grown as CSA. Tell me briefly how it works. It's all online, but you've got some in-person stuff too?
no, no. It's almost 100% Zoom meetings.
Okay.
Um, and just to be perfectly clear, Snap does a lot of good work, but at the time I didn't feel that they were catering or helping the other survivors, and that was really the catalyst for me doing my own thing. And we have different rules too, you know. In some organizations, there's a list of rules, a preamble to the meeting, what you can and cannot say.
Right,
SESA meetings, you could say whatever the hell you want.
right,
And
right,
I think that's lended to some of the success. You know, out of 37,000 members, there's like 20,000 plus that aren't active.
right. Yeah, I work with husband material and we have like 5,000 in our online community, but active is maybe about 10% of that, who are very, very active. But yeah, they're there. So yeah, a little looky-loos, they'll check in and see what's going on and when they have need or and so forth. So that's common, but still,
And it's seasonal.
37,000, that's big. Yes.
It's seasonal too.
Oh, yes.
The audience is very, very low during the summer, but seasonal affective disorder, I guess we'll call it, you know,
Right.
and late fall and in the dead of winter, that's when everybody attends.
Right. Plus, we're recording this in October, and we're coming up on the holidays here. I know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so triggering, the holidays, because of all the stress and so forth, that for I think all support groups, 12-step groups, whatever, that
Mhm.
it's a popular time because people are dealing with all those holiday stressors, but yes, the seasonal affective disorder as well. But yeah, all those holiday stresses
I think
and
if
holiday
you,
memories. And for, I
yeah.
mean, for a lot of us, vacations were a big time when, yeah, probably a lot of the abuse happened because there
Mhm.
was accessibility because there was no school.
I,
So, yeah,
I can only imagine because I wasn't molested in a domestic situation, but it would seem like if you were, everything would trigger you.
right. Yeah. Lots of triggers. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes. So you then got your law degree and you've been fighting the fight in the legal realm as well. So tell me about that.
So when the law passed in Louisiana unanimously, I hadn't even gone to law school at that point. The reason that I did it, because of what's not in the settlement agreement, is I get to go to any Jesuit-owned university, anything I want to take. No admissions, no nothing. I just, yeah, it was, which is
Nice.
cool. So I said, wow, if I learn about the law, I can use that against them. Okay. And the politics side, we had a huge victory in Louisiana. I'm like, hey, let's do it in Texas. Texas is very conservative. They care about their children.
Right.
And they'll tell you so. And I'm like, Texas is going to be a breeze. It's been introduced twice that I know of. We were involved in the second time. We were much more well organized. We had attorneys, the whole thing, and it died on the House committee. They didn't
Wow.
even read it.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And so I tried to get other representatives to pick it up and to file it, and I couldn't find anybody.
Wow. Yeah, Texas is a little bit of everything, depending on where you are. And Texas is a huge state, and they do their own thing there. I've been to Texas several times.
And if you think
Um,
pedophiles are creepy, you should
yeah.
see the politicians.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Absolutely. So, yeah, so that's your ultimate goal, is to be a voice in person for this issue, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Texas, at any given session, about 3,000 bills are filed. And, knowing about the legislative process and when you're facing 3,000 bills, you have to pay attention. So I can understand why some bills don't make it out of
right,
committee. But this is a
right.
very important issue, and it should be the number one heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
I say this all the time, and it bears repeating because people keep doing it. Don't go to your own abuser thinking that they're going to help you. Like the church, right? They now have victims assistant coordinators, and they'll copiously take down every detail and pretend like they're listening, and then nothing happens. And you will get a lawyer, and they will use your own words against you. I've seen it many times happen.
Yes.
So don't go to the church, but that's just silly. So you go to an attorney and you file a police report.
Yep.
That's it. Let your attorney worry about all that stuff. Do the police report as a matter of documentation. A lot of people
Right.
don't have documentation, and that's the sad thing about the statute of limitations with the look back window. They argued that the court system would be inundated. The fact, first off, that didn't happen. Attorneys are really good at vetting their clients. And even if
Right.
an attorney believes your story, he has to make a case. And when you're
Right.
talking about 40, 50 years ago, people are dead now and evidence is lost
Right.
and forever. And so that's the painful part about the look back window. But the big message is get yourself an attorney
Yep.
and make a police report
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
and
thank
get
you.
and get some help.
Right. Thank you for showing the way with all the cases and coming out and shining a light on the different institutional abuses you faced and fighting them. And you're on the forefront. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for what you do and for coming here and sharing your story.
It was a pleasure, and I do appreciate the opportunity that you afforded me to be on your show.
Oh, absolutely. And again, if you would like to join us on future episodes with our live audience, you can learn more about that at polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And join us next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Life Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarlifeconsulting.com. That is Polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.